colorful art, public actions, and activism for the midterms. My name is Rachel Gita Karp. I use she, her pronouns. I work at the Center for Artistic Activism, and I'm an artist and an activist. I'll share more about all of that in a moment, but first I want to bring up some folks from our partner organizations for this event. Andrew Wood from the People vs. Project 2025, and Alicia Tonsik from Theater Communications Group.
Hey there. I really wanted to say hello, welcome, thank you for being with us early on a Sunday morning. I know it's a really busy week, whether you're here in town for the flurry of everything or you're just in your daily flurry life of living here. Thank you for this space. I really believe that this is such a time for not just civic courage, but also, if ever there has been a time for community and coalition building, it is now. It is yesterday. So thank you for making the space and time and priority to be here toward that work. And welcome. I'm excited to be here with you all and everything we're going to do together. And I will hand off to Andrew.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Alicia. And I want to say this thank you to TCG, because we're from the West Coast. I'm from San Francisco. And we didn't know how to organize anything in New York. And TCG just stepped up and found this place, did all kinds of logistical things for us. And I also, before we start, want to thank Rachel and the Center for Artistic Activism, because they've put together the program, and it's a really powerful program. So I just want to say thank you to the partners that did this with us, because we couldn't have done it by ourselves. We just parachuted into town, and they did all of the setup and all of the work for us. So the People versus Project 2025 was founded at the Americans for the Arts Conference in Cincinnati on Friday, June the 13th. It was a lunch meeting, and we had posed the question, who's doing something to fight the Trump administration and Project 2025 from the arts community? And when we looked around the room, we realized there wasn't anybody. So we decided we would have to try and found this thing there and then. And so we did. We started, and we're a network organization. We're not something that's going to produce a lot of different things around the country. That's going to be down to a lot of different people. But what we're trying to do is figure out, and then there's lots of ways for artists to get involved. This is not the only one. This is the one that kind of evolved for us. And so there's a lot of different things happening. What we gravitated towards was, how do we get involved in large-scale public actions where artists take a lead with communities that have been impacted by Project 2025 and communities that have been impacted by the Trump administration. And how do we take the knowledge and skill sets of the artists to work with those communities to come up with public actions that are more than just demonstrations, that are actually performative events that empower everybody to get involved but look better than demonstrations and get on television. And how do we do that in a coordinated way around the country at the same time? And most importantly, how do we get the people in the center of the country, in the swing states that are most important, to take ownership and leadership of this? What we really want to do is be the ones that just usher in the idea that if you're in a contested state and you're an artist, you're incredibly, incredibly important, because you have the power to lead and work with the people to project their message and to make it loud, and to make it simple, and to make it colorful. Because that's what we're trying to do. There's lots of other things that can happen. There's lots of other ways for artists to get involved. And I think, and there's artists in this room who do this regularly, who always work in community, who do activism, and it's about generating those relationships that can become projects, real projects later on when you're working in that type of community situation. But what we're going to do today is just go through a very hands-on, quick, this is what you can do when you go home, and we hope you will all want to do this when you go home. Is that sufficient? Okay. So please, a round of applause for Rachel. Thank you very much.
All right. So, like Andrew said, we're going to do a number of things today. And we want to share a huge range of of ways that artists and activists have worked together to have direct impact, and we hope that each of you can leave with something really concrete that you're going to be doing moving forward to do that yourselves. But the people in this room are so amazing and have so much experience with this, and so we really want to start with you. And so we want you to get into small groups of about 3 people, ideally folks you don't know so well, and to share about yourselves, who you are, where you're from, what you do, and what experience you might have with combining art and activism. If you have, or if you haven't, all is right, and you're all supposed to be here. What you've seen maybe that has worked really well, what maybe hasn't been as effective, and what are things that you've been really trying to understand and learn and know. And so we're going to do that for about 10 minutes total, and so that'll be about 3 minutes per person if we factor in also you all finding each other. Yeah, any questions? Are you all ready to chat? Great. So we want to go from our small groups to share out to the bigger group. I'm really curious if there were any things that came up that were similar across people's experiences in your small groups, or anything that you heard that was particularly surprising or interesting to you that you want to share. And just to acknowledge, unfortunately, there is not amplified sound in this room. And so to try to speak as loudly as you can, or ask for some kind of help from a louder neighbor, and to keep any other sort of side chatter really low so that it's easier to hear. But does anyone want to say anything to kick us off?
Mainly, I was just talking. I haven't done too much in the activism world yet, but I live down in Charlotte now, and I heard at one point, how to get involved is do what you do best and what you know. And I work as an agent, but I also book a lot of artists down in Charlotte and around small brewery stuff, doing concert series. And so the idea I'm trying to get off the ground is reaching out to those artists and kind of make a cultural front of a sort of generally encourage those artists to write music, write protest music, get kind of that group going in a smaller area that hopefully grows from there. So it's still unclear, don't really have the end goal, but I don't think I need one necessarily.
Anyone else wants to share or nominate someone? Yeah, great.
I think what we shared or we found in common was serving the needs of the community or communities, the people, engaging them in our art, working together, not to focus on the outcome. For me, also that's but also please share what I missed. But for me personally, I'm not from the US, and I found myself recently asking myself who am I as an artist? Because I wasted a lot of years asking who am I as a human, in this country. But now I'm thinking, how to answer that question, I need to answer how could I be of service to the people or to the community. And I think that for me is one of the definitions of combining art and activism, rather than doing art in a traditional way, in a traditional kind of form. Yeah.
I appreciate that. And my name is Matt Garza, one of the co-founders of the House of Glitter. We're a dance company, performance lab, and preservation society that works at the intersection of activism, community wellness, and artistic practice. So we were talking about performative activism and kind of thinking about the how to relate and engage with that as it comes up. And the more I've meditated on that, I feel recognizing that cancel culture has kind of gotten us into this sticky mess. I feel I would encourage us or invite us to think about what it looks like to rebrand performative activism as rehearsing activism, because I think there's still something powerful in signal boosting and in engaging with the kind of even the liminal periphery of direct action and the possibility that happens even if someone's interested in performing activism, what that pathway to real direct action and impact can look like. And I think we need less of competitive activism as well. And I think performative activism has been a tool to divide even people who are trying to work towards the same goal. So anyway, that's just something coming up for me in terms of reframing even how we relate to people whose activism we feel is shallow, because we actually, there's some people who aren't actually interested in even performing activism. So I think, like, what can we do with that kind of margin of community who's finding their voice and finding their place and finding their agency in that way?
My name's Andrew. I work at Mid-Atlantic Arts, so a funder, but I also sing. I'm in a choir in Minneapolis, where I live. And last spring, we had a concert where we worked with a Palestinian composer from Canada, because we really wanted to center Palestinian voices in that moment and introduce our audiences to just a broad swath of Palestinian song, and then donate proceeds to groups that were helping folks in Gaza. So it was very meaningful kind of art as activism, rather than activism with art. But yeah, it felt like it really hit with the audience, but was kind of limited in scope to folks who were attending those engagements.
Oh yeah, for sure. Hi, my name is Ashley Hayes. I'm a poet producer. But also one conversation that came up was when there's art, there are those who get to opt out of activism and those whose art is necessarily activism. And I think that we have to do a better job of inviting those who don't see their art as activism or who get to opt out and requiring it, because if those who are always in the front lines aren't resting, aren't handing the baton off to someone else, we're getting burnt out. We're the one housing artists when they're losing their grants and they're homeless, pinching pennies together. Why is it always that this smaller subset of marginalized folks are committed to liberation and it's not optional, but then there are for folks which fight for liberation is not guaranteed or is not mandatory. So.
When I was moving around, I heard some really amazing examples of work that people are doing. We all just heard amazing examples of work. We're going to share a couple examples of ways that we've seen artists and activists work together to have really concrete wins. Of course, these are just 3 examples that we knew about and wanted to share with you. We are in no way saying this is comprehensive, but it's just to give you a taste across mediums and modes and locations. We're talking different things across the country and even around the world. And we're going to start with a video that a friend of the People vs. Project 2025 made about work that has been happening.
Hi, I'm Eric Coopers. I'm an inclusive performance artist and teacher and a professor of inclusive performance at Cal State University East Bay in Northern California. And I'm sharing here some experiments we've done with performance activism. Our approach for each of these actions was to make something as accessible, simple, and easily adaptable as possible. Choreography, performance structure that then could be shared with as many groups as are interested in participating, and then they can adapt it for their needs. So in this case, we got 9 different Cal State University campuses. Most of the people involved would not consider themselves performers or even artists, but we encouraged everybody to just reclaim their birthright in human bodies as dancers and to take this very simple movement structure and make it work for their campus. And then we edited it all together. It was we meaning me, and because we were doing it on a very tight schedule and with very limited resources, it was a do-it-yourself, grassroots, whatever works approach. Very specific goal to pass Proposition 30 and to make sure Proposition 32 did not pass, and we were successful in both of those. Now, it's hard to say exactly what tipped the balance, but I think our statewide dance action made a big difference.
No, no,
And recently, we have been experimenting with a new model for action in this current poly crisis we find ourselves in. And we experimented a little bit before, but then especially on No King's Day 2025 with a flash mob dance performance done in multiple cities, again with a very simple, adaptable choreography and an intention to reclaim power for the people in the midst of these challenging times. And we hope to keep developing this throughout the next year and beyond, however long it's needed. Please join us in whatever way makes sense to you and your communities.
I'm going to pull out some takeaways from some of these examples, and one that has come up a lot in us working with the People versus Project 2025 is this concept of tactical frivolity. And it's newer to me, so I'm just going to read an explanation of it, but you saw it throughout that video. So it's a protest and activism strategy that uses humor, playfulness, absurdity, and creative performance to make political points and challenge power structures. The idea is that by using joy, satire, colorful costumes, music, dance, puppetry, or other theatrical elements, activists can disarm opposition and make it harder for authorities to respond with aggression, since it's harder to crack down on people dressed as clowns or having a dance party. It can attract media attention and public interest more effectively than traditional protests. It can build community and solidarity through shared creative expression. It can reframe serious issues in ways that are accessible and engaging, and it can subvert expectations and create cognitive dissonance that makes people think differently. And I heard some of this coming up also in your small conversations, and I'm sure you can think of other examples too, like the really amazing costumes people would wear at ICE protests in Portland and other places. That is like another example of that tactical frivolity. And now I'm going to move on to our next example and invite Bryony Romer, who works with Indivisible Brooklyn, and she's going to talk about a different action and some other approaches that had a big win. Do you want this little clicky thing?
Sure.
And this is our little...
Hi. Can you guys hear me okay? Yes. Okay. It's a very subtle mic from up here. So great. So happy to be here. I'm Bryony, she, her pronouns. I organize with Indivisible Brooklyn. Indivisible Brooklyn was founded in 2016, right after the first Trump election. And it grew out of a group called Get Organized Brooklyn that was convened by then council member Brad Lander and Rabbi Rachel Timoner in Park Slope, Brooklyn. And this action that I'm sharing here was actually a Get Organized Brooklyn action. We organized in groups. This was this massive gathering that happened a week after the Trump election. 2,000 people came out to a local synagogue, and we broke up into topic groups. And I was involved in the healthcare group. As you may remember, their big focus in the spring of 2017 was repealing the Affordable Care Act. So I should say that this was not specifically an arts collaboration in the sense that there was not somebody who came forward and was like, I'm an artist and I want to organize this action. It was very organic within the organizing of the group. One member of our group said, I want to do a die-in. And we said, great, everyone who wants to work on that, go with her. We built these die-ins very specifically on the history of ACT UP, the die-ins that they had done, with tombstones that specifically called out the kind of cause of death, so it created very specific messaging. We were very lucky with timing. Our first die-in was in March of 2017. It ended up being just a couple of days after the Republicans announced their repeal plan. So we kind of hit it with timing. We then held a subsequent die-in in June as part of a coordinated effort in multiple cities that we organized. But I think one important thing that came out of this, and that's relevant to some things that have come up already about kind of the role of artists on the coasts versus in the middle of the country, the ability to shape a narrative. So I think one thing that really interested us, in addition to the power of the event itself, we had the die-in, which is a very sort of somber and important moment. We had people tell their stories of how the ACA repeal would have impacted them. But this got picked up first by the media. We had good coverage of the immediate event. Second, it was picked up by new nascent groups around the country as a kind of format for protest. So it became this wave thing that spread around the country. And so that's one thing I wanted to just highlight, is that sometimes actions and models for actions that are really powerful and effective in the moment will take off and be picked up and become kind of a movement. The second thing that happened is the images from the die-ins, both ours and other people's, as you can see here, became kind of the go-to image for media who were writing about healthcare, not just covering die-ins, but like, you know, Trump care will probably kill thousands each year, and there's this image of tombstones saying like why people died, and you know, Trump care helped the rich, not me. And that those images sort of continue to circulate sometimes when there's healthcare. So there's an opportunity for artists to really help shape what the story is around what's happening nationally. And ultimately, the Obamacare repeal vote failed. You know, there is a lot that went into that. There was a lot of organizing beyond this, but I do think that this set of actions and the way that it had the ability to ripple out helped make a difference.
Okay, one more example, and for this we're going to go outside of the United States. So the organization I work with, the Center for Artistic Activism, we help people use their creativity to have direct activist impact, and we've done this all over the world. And one place we've done this a lot, truth be told before my time there, but the stories remain, is a country, North Macedonia. Here's a map, if you don't know, here to help. And so some of our artist friends who lived in the urban places of North Macedonia went into rural areas and wanted to bring their art. And the people they encountered there didn't care because they couldn't really function in their day-to-day. They had like huge infrastructure issues in these rural areas, most visibly represented by potholes. And they had tried really traditional ways to talk to the local officials to get things fixed, and nothing was working. And so they looked at these outsiders and they were like, you're here, why don't you try to do something? And the reason why the traditional methods weren't working was because of a lot of corruption that was happening in that country and that whole region. And so people had sort of given up and basically thought, government doesn't work for me. But the artists knew that there would be some way to get the politicians' attention and get them to actually make change. And they just had to figure out how. And so they did a lot of things. And one was that they held a fishing contest. And so this is outside of, that's a pothole that's just the whole road. Like, I don't even know what you would call it, filled with water. And they really committed, right? They put on fishing garb, they had fishing gear, and they sat there, and people would come by and ask them, what are you doing? And they'd say that they were having a fishing contest. And if anyone wanted to be kind of like a wise ass and be like, well, did you catch anything? They had thought about that. And in that little orange bucket, they had brought some fish from like a local market so they could show off. And this really got picked up in the local media, and the pothole finally was fixed. And so a lesson from this is that element of surprise can be so useful. When people are off balance, they have to experience new things, they're not quite sure what's happening, they can get them thinking a different way. Like if you stumble upon a kind of more traditional action, like you know what that is, it's a protest, you probably know how you feel about it, you can join if you want, you can also be like, okay, I'm just gonna take a different road if you don't want to join. But if you see this, it's like, I don't know, maybe I need to lean in. It's the same thing like when you see tons of people dancing on a college campus in the first example, or all of those die-ins in Brian Yu's example. It's just like a way to sneak in and get people thinking differently. it wasn't just fishing contests, they held birthday parties for potholes that had been around for a long time. And I've like, in sharing this story, I know this is also something that's happened in other places in the United States, like especially in Atlanta. Some people we worked with are like, oh yeah, we've had birthday parties for potholes. And they got those potholes fixed. And one of the lessons in that, which we've also been hearing, is to really think about how to create that irresistible imagery. It's stuff that we all in this room are so good at, or work with people that are really good at. And like I've been part of actions where it's maybe more traditional, but then someone comes in and is wearing this like amazing costume, and just all the news cameras like pan en masse to catch that. And we can really plan for that and create those moments. Last little fun thing that they did that I want to share with you, there were a bunch of potholes outside of schools. And so the kids would like have to get all muddy going to and from school. And so the artists just did one super simple thing, right? Like they added these rubber ducks, which happened to also be a symbol for corruption in North Macedonia. So they were playing on this in multiple levels. But the kids didn't know that. They just wanted to play with the rubber ducks. And like, this is not an art masterpiece, right? Like, I don't know if anyone is like, yeah, I just go around and put rubber ducks places. But it worked. And it's like so cheap, right? But it worked. It took 3 days and the potholes were fixed. And so it's just a reminder, and perhaps also why Andrew said, like, what was it? Loud, simple, colorful. Simple can really work. Like, I think we can often think about all of the things that go into a really complex, collaborative art effort, but sometimes it can be just as easily as putting something in a puddle. And with these actions and some others that my colleagues helped them with, it's estimated that these folks got over 15 million euros worth of infrastructure improvements in that country, which is just like an astronomical amount. So you've heard examples from us, you've heard examples from your peers. What are these things bringing up for you? Just a few thoughts I'd love to hear and for you to share with the group. Yeah.
I'm so bad at coming up with those irresistible images and like brainstorming, and I feel like ChatGPT is also like rot in my brain. Creative thinking.
Yeah.
So, like, are there other like artists, people that do these kind of surprise, like out of place, make you wonder type of things that you can keep inspiration from?
Yeah, right. I can offer a resource. There's a website called Beautiful Trouble that has, brought together, aggregated many examples of creative direct actions around the world, and it's a really good resource for sparking ideas in that way.
We also have one called Actipedia that you can look at. Yeah. ACTIPEDIA. And I'm so sorry, I can't remember in this moment if it's .com or .org.
So we used to have this thing in New York called the Urban Playground Movement, which was basically what the party scene did during the day. So like New York used to have warehouses that were empty and not stores or shopping malls. Like Industry City used to just be free space. I mean, you had to rent it, but it was like cheap. And we would at night spend a month creating these immersive, wild party spaces, and then throw some crazy party. And during the day, that group of humans did this thing that was like very decentralized called the Urban Playground Movement, where like you call a parade, like rainbow parade, everyone meet here at 3 p.m. Or like we're throwing a gourmet dinner on the L train. And like some of these things are online, a lot of them aren't. Some of them still exist in very underground forms that I won't share. But like spontaneous play in public space, like it doesn't have to be complicated, and it doesn't even have to be like it can become political, right? Like you can put whatever framing you want on top of it. We used to have this group where we would create like games that like people would show up to play a game in public, and maybe it was just like balloons, like bouncing 100 balloons like in the air trying to keep them up, like something really dumb. But there's always ways to twist something like that into something political. It's a great way to engage people who maybe don't think of themselves as political but go, oh, that looks like fun. It's also beautiful imagery. So just thinking about play and games and like spontaneous fun, and then putting messaging on top of that can be really useful. Thanks.
So sorry, for time, I'm going to move us along. We will have much more time to talk, but we have a lovely panel of folks who are doing this work of combining art and activism that we're going to invite up now and hear from. These are immensely successful multi-hyphenates, and these few words I put on the screen do not at all do them justice. So their fuller bios, thanks, Gavin. Their fuller bios are on the registration page. I really encourage you to read them through. But please, Peter, who else are we? Anjali, yeah, come on up. And Brian.
Hi, everybody. Like Rachel said, we're trying to be mindful of the time. So we'll skip past bios, but just introduce ourselves briefly. And as we get settled up here, I just wanted to share a quote that I heard yesterday that was inspirational by the new mayor of New York City, Mamdani, who recently said, "When I speak about making our city more affordable, my vision is not limited to the homes that we live in or the childcare that we're making universal. It's also a vision where we make it possible for working people to afford lives of joy, of art, of rest, and of expression." Isn't that exciting? Let's spread that word and amplify it. And one other thing related to the tactical frivolity, I also have been going down lots of rabbit holes about that, and I invite you to actually literally just Google or go to Wikipedia for tactical frivolity. There's tons of examples just there, and then you'll go down that rabbit hole. But another term for tactical frivolity can be laughtivism. Isn't that great? Because fascists don't have a sense of humor. So, as Rachel mentioned, bios can be found, but I invite everybody to just state your name, maybe what organization you're from, and might I suggest we stand when we speak, but go ahead and stay seated if you would like. My name is Gavin Lodge. I'm the executive director of 4A Arts, American Alliance of Artists and Audiences, and we are grassroots organizers of citizens trying to transform citizens from arts consumers into arts advocates. So first, I'll go with Peter, if that's all right. The question, after you introduce yourself briefly, is what have you seen to be the most successful tactic for artists and advocacy organizations working together and to energize the public in activism? Peter.
Hey, good morning, everybody. Thank you. My name is Peter Alfred Elizalde, or you can just call me Pete. That's like way more comfy and cozy for me. Right now I'm using they, them pronouns, and I am a dancer, choreographer, a DJ, a nightlife professional, and also community organizer. And I'm also the director of programs at New Yorkers for Culture and Arts. We are New Yorkers for Culture and Arts, and we are a nonprofit advocacy coalition comprised of artists, cultural workers, nonprofit, for-profit, big and small, all working to build a more just and equitable cultural ecosystem. We do a lot of budget advocacy in that regard and connect artists and arts organizations to city council. And the question was, please repeat it.
Yeah, no, that's all right. What have you found most successful engaging artists and advocacy organizations, particularly in getting the public activated in activism?
Okay, what I'm gonna say might sound like common sense or might be a little silly, but I mean it. Gossip. Literally, I think I'm so serious. I'm so serious. People, what I notice has been really helpful is orgs and artists talking about their needs in a very candid way. So for real, just say what you need and make it known to everybody around you. Because oftentimes people are a little bit siloed in their experiences, and you can write the best letter that you want to city council, but if you're the only one writing that letter, this is not to be they either are too busy or don't care. I'm sorry. And either way, in order to get yourself out there, you need to have more people on the same page as you. So literally gossip. That's what I'll say.
Hi. I already introduced myself. Bryony, she, her pronouns, Indivisible Brooklyn. I also have a background both as a visual artist and I also do work as an arts administrator. So I'm also in this world. I think the things that I've seen, there's sort of two poles of things I've seen be really effective from my perspective with Indivisible Brooklyn, collaborating with artists. The first is really deep collaboration, like artists who embed themselves within the organization and really like learn what the organization is doing. And that can really spur deep collaborations over time from a place of really shared ownership of the goals of the activist work. And then on the other spectrum, I think the other thing I've seen work is offers of specific skills, resources, space without an agenda. So artists saying, like we recently were organizing with Hands Off NYC, this new citywide coordinated campaign, a day of action to spread whistle kits, to build awareness of ICE. And an artist who had a space in Sunset Park just reached out and said, I want to host something at my space. I have the space. They didn't come with a sort of like whole idea of exactly what they wanted to do. They were like, you guys tell me. And they were really open, and that worked really well too. So,
+1 to everything you said. I feel like you just said exactly what I would have said. My name is Anjali Deshmukh. I am the co-founder of Make Justice Normal and Streetworks. It's a combination of an organization that's focused on designing justice-centered community organizing and organizational models alongside art practices on the street. I really resonated with what you shared earlier about working on the street and games. My work involves a lot of game design. Am I holding it the wrong way? Is it this way? This way? Oh, okay. I'm not projecting. Okay. Yeah, and just to answer your question, +1, but I would add to that that I think that artists are very good at seeding hope, safety, and belonging, but that is like a bud, and the only way that the bud can grow into a plant is if you tie it to tactics and plans. So if you are willing to do the work and embed, your work doesn't end at the experience of creating hope, safety, and belonging, which is very powerful. It ends, quote unquote, if it ever does, at the tactics and plans that you pair to it.
Thank you. So I'm Andrew Wood, Mutually Assured Productions, San Francisco International Arts Festival is our largest project. I'm going to tell you a story, and I could go on infinitum about this one. I'm just going to really try and make it brief. When the next presidential cycle, a gentleman named Gavin Newsom is going to be running for president. He used to be the mayor of San Francisco. We had a terrible accident happened. There was a gang shooting, and a man and his 2 sons were shot. 2 of them died. And it was a case of mistaken identity. It was done by a young Salvadoran man from a gang called La Mara Salvatrucha. Newsom just went after the Salvadoran community. He just started talking about people deporting people. He was doing this en masse. And we were friends with an organization that serves the Salvadoran community. And I asked their executive director, what can we do? And she said, just create some stories so they don't think we're just animals. So the artist Paul Flores, he's a playwright and a poet, and one of the founders of Youth Speaks. He and I, so we started working with the Salvadoran community to create a play that became called Placas, which is a Spanish slang word for tattoos. And the place was directed by Michael John Garces from Cornerstone Theatre, and it starred Rick Salinas from Culture Clash. And it was about a gangster who came out of prison, and he was determined to be an example to his son, so his son would not follow him into the gang. And it involved a whole process of tattoo removals and all that kind of stuff. It was a hard-hitting play. But Paul's also a social worker. And so we were able to access the social services system, the juvenile justice system, and do a lot of work with young men who were incarcerated or on probation. And there was one particular scene where Rick was talking to his son, and it was a confrontation. And there was all these young men that Paul was working with who were all Salvadoran. They were all on probation, and they were all about to become fathers for the first time. And so when Paul was having them read the script to each other, and they all started out with the position of the son. But over the course of that rehearsal and that process, they started to think about being a father. And Paul's not Salvadoran. He's Cuban and Mexican, and so he was sort of fixing the script to get all the wording right, so that it would actually fly with the Salvadoran community. But it was a wonderful play that went into juvenile halls and justice places, and we did restorative justice, and they did all these workshops for young people. And the play premiered in San Francisco in 2012, and we toured it for 4 years until 2016. And it was, as far as we know, it was the first professionally staged Salvadoran play in the United States that toured. So that's mine.
Thank you. Keeping in mind our time, now, have you seen any mistakes or things that could have been improved upon in this effort to engage everybody in activism?
Totally, yeah. I'm hesitant to call it a mistake because, like, I think any action, a learning opportunity, right? Because any action that you take, I think, is going to be effective, even if you're doing it alone. But I'm just going to say kind of what I already said, just that we're sort of in an era of collective action, and you have to talk to your peers. Like I guarantee you, and we work with a lot of art service organizations at New Yorkers for Culture and Arts, and as we've seen in the last year, have taken a huge hit in funding because of NEA retreats and retreats from philanthropy itself. So just know that if you're working at an art service org, just know that you are not the only one having these problems, and you need to talk to your peers. I think that's like really, to keep it really quick and cute, that's all I'll say about that.
Yeah, a couple thoughts on that. I think one thing that we've seen that really doesn't work is when artists come to our org with like sort of fully baked projects that they want us to like co-sponsor, because it's very rare that that's going to be strategic for us and going to be something that moves the activism forward. I think the other thing, this was something that came up in our little group conversation, I don't have totally formulated, but on a bigger scale, I think it's about silos and related to what you were saying, Pete. I think there's a real opportunity at this moment with the rising authoritarianism in this country for the arts to think beyond the arts and to really work across and join coalitions with unusual partners. Think about steps you can take, and yeah.
Yeah, I would say we're in a world where everything is dictated by the product, the transaction, the what, and instead of the how and the relationships that you form without expecting your outcome to be already decided. So it's related to what you said, but I think our entire art practice is guided by how. That is the art practice. Relationship as art, co-creation is the art. Inclusive action is the art, not the product. The product doesn't matter to us. If the outcome is an installation, if the outcome is in our case, a time bank. We're working on a time bank right now with our local community. An outcome might be also, somebody came to us and asked us if we would help to host and get into New York state law citizen assemblies. That is all art to me. It doesn't matter what it looks like. And if you are willing to sort of put aside the thing that you think it should be and say, well, what does it mean for me to be in meaningful relationship with my community? You'll find that your definition of art changes.
Okay, to offer a specific example, at the turn of the century, during the first dot-com boom, I was part of a group called the Coalition for Jobs, Arts and Housing. And so it was mainly housing and it was mainly other things, but I was the arts part of it. And so we realized the prices were going up, rents were going up, people were being evicted. So we did what we were supposed to do. We protested, and nobody paid attention at all. And then there was an organization called Dancers Group that had a studio on 22nd and Mission, and they were threatened with eviction. So 100 artists, performing artists, daubed themselves in Buto paint and marched down Mission Street. Cameras came from all over the world. It became a cause célèbre thing. It was the artist that drew attention to the whole issue. The problem was they didn't do it in tandem with the other sectors of the community. So everyone hated them because they grabbed the limelight in a way that they are very good at doing. I mean, performing artists spend a lot of time trying to draw attention to themselves. They are very good at it. And what we need to do is channel that in community and not do it in a silo, not just do it as an artist on your own. That's the one thing. And there's one other thing, because we have presenters in the room. And the way that the artists can get involved in protest and activism is myriad. I think for presenters, it's a much more narrow thing, and it's just to support the artist. And you saw Eric talking about the No Kings rally. Now, that was something that could have been done better, because that was taken at a place called Sue Bierman Plaza. And that rally started at Sue Bierman Plaza, went down Market Street, and ended up at Civic Center. Our flash dance was supposed to be at Civic Center at the end, but our friends who were doing the organizing pulled the wrong type of permit, so we couldn't do it there. They sent us back to Sue Bierman Plaza. What that meant was we had 200 dancers ready to do this, and because it was happening 2.5 hours earlier, I don't know if you know, but the hardest people to schedule in the world are dancers. So we lost half of our dancers, and then we realized that there was 3 groups organizing the rally, and they all took different sections of it, rather than doing it as a wholesome thing. And the California Nurses Association had the entire production budget at Civic Center. So there was no money left to have a sound system at Sue Bierman Plaza. So we had to get our own. And we had all these other artists that didn't have a sound system that they needed. So it was just, we said, what we need to do as presenters is how do we support these types of actions in supporting the artists. We can pull the permits, we can rent the toilets, we can source the artists, we can give the artists the equipment they need and the technical support they need, and we can credit the artists so that everyone knows who's doing what and where and when. So I think that was just an example there that could have been, it looked great, and we did a lot of great things, but now we know how in this year we can do better and we can be more organized. Sorry.
No, that's wonderful, Andrew. Thank you. You might have already anticipated this question, which is, what advice do you have for artists to activate with advocacy organizations and the public? I'll pass it over, but there has been a lot of advice, so it might not, I don't know. Have at it.
Sure. There you go. I'm going to share my personal ABCs, which is audacity, bravery, creativity, or community. It could be both. But those are 3 things that I think artists need to have in general. I was just ranting in the back about how we are in somewhat of a fierceness crisis, and we need to step it up for real, because I think this like a lack of energy is how some of this stuff has kind of happened to us. Like we need to really wake up our innate fierceness. There's no really other way I can put it than that. But that's for artists, fierceness. Like wake it up, be brave, and talk. Like tell art service orgs and tell your city council members what you need. And then for art service orgs, I'd say listen. Like just really actually listen to what your community is saying to you. I've seen oftentimes, and sorry, I'm speaking from like the art service perspective, just because it's what I've seen the most, is I get it, like working at a nonprofit arts org, capacities are very stretched, but I think you need to really listen to the needs of your constituents, the artists that you serve, and that's all I'll say.
Great. This is in line with what I've been saying the whole time, but I guess said with love, as an artist, don't be special. Join in with an activist group in the same way that anyone does, which is you get involved, you learn what the work is, and you figure out how to apply your particular skill set to advancing that work. The pieces of that are show up, go to meetings, meet the people, do the work, and do all the work, like do the boring stuff, do the hard stuff, if part of what your group is doing is like canvassing or putting up flyers, like do the stuff. And that's how you build trust and you build relationships and you really plug in. And then be curious, like what is this group's approach? Like what are their goals? How are their strategies moving towards that? Do you see ways that their tactics could be enhanced with all of the amazing skills that you bring? And then I feel like there was another thing and now I forgot what it was. Anyway, but that's my bit.
I'll pass it back to you if it comes back. a +1 again to both of you. I also want to call out somebody named earlier, rehearsal activism versus performative activism. I completely agree with that, and we talk about that as ritual. So instead of focusing on the product, think about or leave a corner of your practice open to ritual as the way you go about the work, which is more about behavior change, more about daily practices than it is about an end goal.
Yeah, I just want to echo what you said. Just understand what Bryony and Anjali have said is they're coming at it from, one's coming from the activist end, one's coming from the artistic end, but they're talking the same language, and they have the same approach, and it's not, I wouldn't characterize it as a lifestyle, but it's an approach and a way of understanding how to be in community. And again, this is not a starring role. This is a facilitating role where you're taking your specific set of skills as a choreographer, as a director, as whatever you are, as a composer, and applying those skills to a regular community of people and enhancing their voices and making them all look amazing in the process. That's the thing, is when everybody's there together and there's a sense of achievement, and the artist who's been instrumental in this is on the side, but understanding that the community is first. That's the most important thing. Okay, thank you.
Finally, Bryony, did you think of your last point? We'll come back to it.
No, it was really just then using your skills in the particular way that advances the work. That was the last thing.
Awesome. Final question, do any of you see opportunities coming up this year for your work in activism, whether that be specific to your work or the midterms or beyond?
Yeah, absolutely. I'll share a few New Yorkers for Culture and Arts programs that are coming up that you all can get involved in. I know this room is not comprised of people generally who are in New York, but you're here now, so I'll tell you all about it. But the first one is our cultural convening, and this is on Zoom, so anyone can join from anywhere. But at the end of January, we organize a group with our community, but it's open to all if you register on ny4ca.org. And it's your opportunity to meet with our current elected city leaders. And this was an interesting one because we just had an election this year. So there's a bunch of new city council members. You're gonna want to talk to them about arts and culture either in your district or just in general, and like what their priorities are for the year ahead. And then the second one, and like I said, I know that this is not necessarily a New York-based group, but surely you know a New York-based artist or advocate who would be interested in this program. But there is the Artist Advocates in Residence program that New Yorkers for Culture and Arts has. It is a twice annual cohort of artists where, well, first of all, we give you $500 a month just to continue the advocacy work that you're already doing. So it's a great program just for that, because one of the things I'm interested in is improving the material conditions of people right now. So whatever it is you're doing, if you think you probably deserve $500 a month to do it. So please apply. My email is peter@ny4ca.org. And just come find me after if you want to learn more about this program. And then lastly, this is more of like a personal thing, but just a separate note. But from me and some other LGBTQIA+ organizers in the field are submitting a discretionary funding application here in New York by February for a trans artist microgrant program. And this is a pilot program that aims to give $500 microgrants to trans artists, low barrier to entry. All they have to do is basically just sign up. And if this goes through, this is gonna be hopefully like a 3-year program that'll give $500 grants to trans artists. So stay tuned for that advocacy. Please follow New Yorkers for Culture and Arts and come talk to me after, and I'll tell you all about it.
Amazing, Pete. That's so exciting. We have a bunch of stuff we're working on at Indivisible Brooklyn, but I think maybe I'll talk broadly nationally about what I see as the big things happening this year that you might be able to get involved with locally. I think the first thing is the midterms. There's a really strong sense that that this authoritarian regime is going to do whatever they can do to steal the midterms. And so the folks are preparing all over to think about how do we respond how do we prepare for that, and how do we respond? What are the acts of non-cooperation and non-compliance that would force the government to accept the results of the midterms, even if they're in the process of trying to steal it? So I think there's work on that going on all over the country. I think it's an enormous opportunity for creative minds of all kinds to plug in. And then second is the effort of the Trump administration to send federal forces en masse into our cities. Minneapolis is just under such horrible attack right now, and it's happening in many cities. Here in New York, we have a coordinated campaign called Hands Off NYC. In DC, there's Free DC. I believe there's Hands Off Chicago. I know that there's that kind of organizing is happening. Here in New York, we've done several citywide community days of action to spread the word about what's happening, to build connections with folks, to build neighborhood-based organizing. And I guess that's the third thing I would say is everyone has the opportunity to organize your neighbors on your block. And that's like the fundamental thing. You can organize your neighbors, and then you can figure out how to connect to a local indivisible group, to a local DSA chapter, whatever sort of organizing there is already in your community. So that's what I'd offer.
I'll just share a few based in New York, if you're based in New York, but specifically Queens, because we work mostly on our block or in our neighborhood. In our neighborhood, we have basically 3 projects right now that came out of collaborations through art that are happening. One is a time bank, which, if anyone is familiar with it, it is a way that you can sort of quote unquote barter without exchange of money through collective pooling of what community has to offer each other. So we are designing that right now to start focus first on Jackson Heights, Queens, with the idea of supporting scale over time. So if you are based in Queens, you are welcome to join us in designing it. The second is a mutual aid group that we run in Queens that's really meant to offer anything that the community comes to us and asks for. Right now we're working on a food drive. We're also working on financial literacy trainings, as well as supporting our local safety groups, community safety groups, given that Queens is a very dangerous place right now if you don't identify as a citizen. And then the last thing I would say is like more national is, and I love the mentions of public space, our work has always been on the street, and so we started to train other people in how to work on the street. And we're releasing a blueprint in around April that's basically like a how-to guide for artists on working in public space. And if you're interested in getting involved in trainings for that, we'll do anything from permit trainings for groups to safety trainings, or like straight up work planning and event planning, which is like really heavy on logistics.
For those who are not from New York, I think the reason we did this during APAP was to get people from around the country to be able to come and talk about this, is go back to your communities and think what you can do. What is your role as an artist or a cultural worker or a presenter, and how can you get involved? And in the ways that we've described this morning, I think that's the most important thing. What we wanted to do was be able to provide you with some type of ideas or inspiration, or just let's talk about this, so that when you go home, you're able to think about how you apply your skill set to community organizing, to community action, and to demonstrations in the lead up to the midterms, because it's an incredibly important year. Thank you.
Can I say something?
Yeah.
My name is Lenore Maxon. I like Andrew from the left coast in San Francisco. And I want to preface my comments by saying that I went to see the Anne Frank exhibit, and that's here in town. And if you don't think we're in a dire situation, go to the section of the exhibit about the rise of Hitler, and we're halfway there right now, here in this country. With the private army, gains in political power, you know that, all that. I'm a consultant. I was a presenter for 20 years. One of the things that I can offer everybody is networking, which has to precede a lot of all this work. There's a casual organization that's called the Presenters Leadership Consortium. And what that is, every state has performing arts centers, and they have a network. Michigan presenters, California presenters, Minnesota presenters, Pennsylvania presenters, Southwest presenters, et cetera, et cetera. We meet once a month, the heads of all these organizations. I am the chair. We run the Zoom once a month for an hour, and there's a listserv, okay? So therefore, we have 66 people on our listserv. I have access to all that. So if you want to communicate with people in specific communities and performing arts centers, given the fact that I have to use a filter so that it's appropriate, I am very happy to offer access. And I think that can be really powerful. I mean, and we really haven't spoken about the state advocacy groups in every state. I know California Arts Advocates and the California for the Arts are very powerful organizations. And right now, because of their work, they've been able to get a bill sponsored to kill all the third-party ticket brokers that are driving us all nuts. And so this is not art, but it's activism.
So we have a little bit of time left. We're gonna go into breakout rooms where you can have more of these kinds of conversations. And we know everyone here is probably identifies in lots of different ways, but we thought we'd do it by background. So actually, sorry, first, thank you, panel. That was a wonderful session. Thank you so much. Sorry about that. And so each panelist and the other organizers, we're going to help lead a short breakout. So if you identify more as a presenter or manager, you can find these two wonderful folks, Andrew and Anjali. Service organizations is Gavin and our wonderful Milena. If you are mainly an artist or want to talk to people, and this can also just be like, I want to hear what artists are saying. You can find Peter, and then if you identify more as an activist or advocacy group, Bryony and I will take that on. And these are the questions we'd like you to talk about. Like Andrew was saying, like what skills do you have or networks are you a part of that you could help, you can draw on to do this work? How do you want to use these skills in the coming year? And are there other things that are barriers that we could maybe help you overcome? Andrew, you know where folks are going.
I think what we should do is
how
many want to go to number one, presenters and managers? Okay, that little room just up the back there. How many people want to do service organizations?
Follow us, we're about to run out of it.
Okay, yeah, you take them to the
Stay in the corner?
Yeah.
Well, you stay in the corner, okay.
Can we?
Artists?
We can stay here.
Yeah.
Great, so it's a bigger.
Back corner?
Okay.
Okay, and then activists, advocacy groups?
Great. Okay, so we can have a little.
Maybe we don't need the other room.
Yeah, you just want to do little corners of this room.
Yeah.
Okay, great.
Okay, so one group can go in the ante room there, and then we'll just break
one,
into three.
two,
Yeah.
yeah.
Ours was this corner.